Hello, I'm Mark State, author of the Witches of Woodville series, the End of Magic trilogy, and I've been selling my books at Comic Cons for 10 years now. But 2025, I really went for it, selling at 42 cons in the UK, and I'm not alone. I've made lots of new author friends this year at cons, and I know that many more authors are thinking about it. So I thought I'd put together a series of short videos passing on what I've learned. So in this series of 4 videos, I'm going to cover the different kinds of Comic Cons there are in the UK, which ones might be right for you, what kit you need to invest in, and I'll take you on a tour of my table, how I lay it out. We're going to talk about ordering stock, cash flow, or lack of it, other expenses, and I'll be asking specific questions that some of you good people have sent me in advance. So let's begin with the big one. Question from Jan Carr. Why? What is your motivation? Yeah, good question, Jan. Why do a Comic-Con? It's a lot of hassle. You have to buy stock, set up a stall, get all the bits and bobs, more on that later, get up at the crack of dawn or before dawn in the winter and drive for hours to some drafty gym hall in a leisure centre. It's not glamorous, and I'm not doing it for the money, I can tell you that. I always make a profit on the day, but the margins are slim and the cash flow is a nightmare. More on that later too. So the first question to ask yourself is, what are your goals for selling at Comic Cons? Why do them at all? Why not stick with online ads and social media? Well, online ads with the likes of Amazon and Facebook just has never worked for me, despite plowing a lot of money into them over the years. And I've never been great on social media, but I was once a bookseller and a publisher sales rep, so I know how to hand sell a book. And my books, especially the Witches of Woodville series, are classic hand sell books. I mean, the first one was published in the second lockdown, the Crowfolk here, never got that bookshop boost that it needed. So when the 5th and final one was published last year, it became clear to me that my publisher had moved on to promoting other things, which happens, you know, it happens. So it meant it would be down to me to keep the momentum going. So I went back to what I know best, which is book selling. Now for me, going to Comic Cons isn't necessarily about the sales on the day, it's more about creating new readers who will come back for more. A long-term investment of your time and money into something that may pay off further down the line. Does it work? Well, one of the great pleasures of doing so many events this year is seeing those readers that bought books earlier in the year coming back later in the year, telling me how much they've enjoyed the books, wanting to buy the others, telling their friends. So it seems to be working. So let's start with the fundamentals. So let's talk about costs. So a question from Catherine Franklin here. I've heard tables at Comic Cons are expensive. Was it ever tricky to make back the pitch fee? Andrew Guile just comes out with it. What does it cost? Julian Barr says, are big cons necessarily better than small ones? And Jennifer Taylor Gray says, which cons were the best for you and why? Was it due to anything you did differently those days, or the con setup itself? All great questions. So let's start by looking at the different kinds of conventions in the UK. Now this year I've been to cons organised by Bolt, Striking, Creed, Showmasters, Reed Pop and Monopoly events, plus a whole bunch of independent and local events. Each offer different opportunities and have varying costs. Let's look at Bolt and Striking together because they're both quite similar, and I believe they were once the same company but bifurcated at some point. They're really well run. The organisers are lovely. They bring around bottles of water and snacks to your stall. The events are aimed at families, young families. These are more like toy fairs or collector events than Comic Cons. There's a lot of Pokemon, a lot of Lego, a lot of toys. I'm very often the only author with the table. There might be one or two of us. Costs vary depending on the size, the location, the venue, but they range from £65 to £125 for a table. Most are at the lower end. You pay a small deposit beforehand to secure a table and settle up on the day. The atmosphere at these events is warm, welcoming. They have great accessibility policies, meaning they allow early entry for folks with disabilities, hidden disabilities. I really like them, but the young family demographic means I do okay at these events. My books are aimed more at adults. I know some of my author friends who have kids' books do better than me at these events, so bear that in mind, but I've always made a profit. Now, every now and then they have guests for photo ops and signings, but not often. I've done more of these events than any other this year, and I've already booked more for 2026. Let's look at Creed and Showmasters together. Again, these share some organisational crossover DNA. They're generally bigger events, and crucially for me, they have lots of great guests. I've discovered that if there's a cast member from Doctor Who or Red Dwarf present, then I'll have a pretty good day. Fans of those shows, they're literate, they have money, they're willing to read new authors. God bless them. Showmasters also run the London Film and Comic Con, which in the autumn co-hosts with YALC, and that's the YA Literary Convention, and that's a huge event for science fiction and fantasy authors. Readers bring their own little trolleys, which they cram with books. books. They're passionate about it. We love them for it. Creed Showmaster tables cost anywhere between £40, £100 depending on the venue, and are great value. Yauk tables cost more, but from talking to author friends who did it this year, sounds like it might be worth the extra. Read Pop MCM now. I've been doing the MCM Comic Cons in London for 10 years. They were my first cons. They're still the biggies. I think the last one had 130,000 people at the Excel Centre over a 3-day weekend. Creator author tables cost £255. I think they're cheaper for the MCM in Birmingham. They have the writer's block where all the indie authors are gathered in their own section. And when I first started, there was nothing like this. It was just me and an author called Kit Cox stuck in a corner nattering to ourselves. Kit kindly let me share his table for the day, which you'd never get away with now. The MC Comic Cons are now a very big deal for authors, and because of that, they have a selection process. Not everyone gets a table. You have to pitch yourself to them. I can't speak to why some authors get in and others don't. I offer to moderate panels, which I think has helped. I think it helps if you're planning to launch your book at the con. They love an exclusive, so bear that in mind. Now, Monopoly events, I only did one Monopoly event last year for the love of fantasy, and the Saturday alone was my biggest single day of the year, bigger than the MCM, and if I'd had enough stock, I don't doubt that the weekend would have been my biggest of the year, totally. It's at the Excel Centre again, just one hall, but they had celebrity guests from Supernatural and Lord of the Rings. They also run events at places like Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham. I've not been to any of these, but I've heard good things. Question from Darius Twyman. What was your favourite con of the year, and why was it the Canterbury Gaming Convention? Thanks, Darius. It was definitely in my top 40. Actually, the Canterbury Gaming Convention was great fun. Not a Comic-Con, but there were a few authors there. We had a very good day, and I'd definitely like to come back for more in 2026. So I've done plenty of independent conventions and events. These can be a bit hit and miss, but the costs are often much lower than the big cons and are always worth a punt. I especially love anything with the steampunk community. Like Doctor Who and Red Dwarf fans, and they're usually both, steampunkers are literate, they're lovely. The Fort Amherst event every Easter has become a highlight for me, despite them sticking me in a cave for 2 days. It's good sales. So that covers the different kinds of conventions and basic table costs. In the next episode, I'll be digging deeper into expenses, targets, cash flow. No, really, it'll be fun, I promise. Well, informative.